A couple of weeks ago there was a couple of questions.
Pred nekaj tedni smo imeli nekaj vprašanj.
There was a question about the poetic structure of chapter 1 in the Bible. Yes.
Imeli pa smo vprašanje o poezijski strukturi prvega poglavja Svetega pisma.
And I just wanted to indicate the poetic structure of Genesis chapter 1, that it differs significantly from Genesis chapter 2.
In rad bi izpostavil poetično strukturo prvega poglavja, ki je precej drugačna od drugega poglavja.
Genesis 1 is a majestic portrayal of the creation story.
To je čudovit prikaz zgodbe stvarjenja.
And you'll notice that there are 7 aspects to each of the 7 days.
Videli boste, da je 7 vidikov za 7 dni stvarjenja.
And this gives us what we call the poetic structure.
In tako dobimo poetično strukturo.
There's an announcement.
Je oznanilo.
God said.
Bog je rekel.
There's a command.
Je zapoved.
There's a fulfillment.
Je izpolnitev.
There's the execution.
Je izvršitev.
There's the approval.
Je odobritev.
It was good. God saw it was good.
Bilo je dobro, Bog je videl, da je dobro.
There is the identification. God names it.
Potem imamo identifikacijo, Bog je imenoval.
And then the day is identified.
In potem so identificirani tudi dnevi.
So that's how we see the poetic structure in those first 7 days of creation.
Tu vidimo poetično strukturo v prvih 7 dneh stvarjenja.
The second question was,
drugo vprašanje pa je bilo,
what it means to be created in the image of God.
Kaj pomeni biti ustvarjen po Božji podobi?
And for me this is a very important question.
Zame je to zelo pomembno vprašanje.
I believe all of us as Christians,
verjamem, da mi vsi kot kristjani,
we need to know
moramo vedeti,
what it means
kaj pomeni,
that God has created us.
Da je Bog nas ustvaril.
What it means
kar pomeni,
that God is your creator.
Oziroma, kaj pomeni, da je Bog tvoj stvarnik.
What it means for your identity.
Kaj to pomeni za tvojo identiteto.
And how it shapes your future.
In kako to oblikuje tvoja prihodnost.
Many people struggle through life.
Mnogi se borijo skozi življenje.
Because in their first few years,
saj prvih nekaj let,
their identity was put down.
Je bila njihova identiteta potlačena.
Their identity as made in the image of God was not reinforced.
Njihova identiteta, da so ustvarjeni po Božji podobi, ni bila udejanjena.
And they grew up thinking,
in odraščali so razmišljajoč,
I'm not really good at anything.
Nisem prav dober v ničemer.
I'm just a nuisance.
Samo za nič sem.
And so I want us just to I want you to understand your identity. I want us to get it.
Rad bi, da razumete svojo identiteto, da to res dojamete.
Now, the word meaning of the word made in God's image, or the word image,
beseda ustvarjen po Božji podobi, oziroma beseda za podobo,
doesn't help us a whole lot.
Nam ne pomaga prav veliko.
It simply means
to preprosto pomeni
a picture,
podoba oziroma slika, nek model,
a shadow,
ali senca,
a likeness, something the same as,
se pravi podobnost, podobno kot.
What it was used in connection with kings.
To je nekaj, kar se je uporabljalo v povezavi s kralji.
To be in the image of another.
Da smo po podobi nekoga drugega.
To share rulership.
Da delimo vladanje.
To share privilege.
Da delimo privilegije.
So humans,
torej ljudje,
have a royal privilege.
Imajo kraljevski privilegij.
To be sons and daughters of the great king.
Da so sinovi in hčere velikega kralja.
Secondly, we think of our identity.
Drugič pa razmišljamo o svoji identiteti.
This is a biblical truth.
To pa je svetopisemska resnica.
That needs to be foundational in our life.
Ki mora biti temeljna v naših življenjih.
Bible says,
Svetopismo pravi,
you are wonderfully and fearfully made.
Čudovito si ustvarjen.
The psalmist also talks about this idea.
Psalmist tudi govori o tej ideji.
It says in Psalm 8:4.
V Psalmu 8:4 pravi,
what is man that you are mindful of him?
Kaj je človek, da se brigaš zanj?
Now this is not a put down of man, of course.
Tukaj ne tlačimo dol človeka, seveda.
But it's a rhetorical question.
Gre pa za retorično vprašanje.
God, how is it that you are so great?
Bog, kako je možno, da si ti tako velik?
And yet you still made man in this high place.
pa si vendar človeka postavil na tako visoko mesto.
a little lower than the heavenly beings,
Samo malo pod nebeškimi bitji,
but they are the crowning glory of creation.
pa vendar so krona in slava stvarstva.
Being created in God's image means you have identity.
To, da si ustvarjen po Božji podobi, pomeni, da imaš identiteto.
Yeah, you are the crowning glory of creation.
Ja, si krona in slava stvarstva.
Thirdly,
Tretjič,
it means God's in charge.
to pomeni, da je Bog glavni.
Being made or created
Biti ustvarjen ali narejen
reminds us that we have a creator.
nas opominja, da imamo stvarnika.
God is the origin of all things.
Bog je izvor vsega,
We come to him,
k njemu prihajamo
he's in charge.
in on je glavni.
It means that our life has purpose
To pomeni, da ima naše življenje namen,
because he's made us
saj nas je on naredil
for his purposes.
za svoj namen.
These are the great questions I think, I hear that teenagers are asking today.
In to so velika vprašanja, o katerih slišim, da najstniki danes
Where do I
sprašujejo.
belong?
Kam spadam?
I don't fit in.
Nikamor ne pripadam.
What is my purpose?
Kaj je moj namen?
And will I be good or will I be fruitful?
In ali bom dober oziroma ali bom rodoviten?
And these questions
Ta vprašanja
are answered
imajo odgovore
in this idea that we are made in the image of God.
ravno v tej ideji, da smo ustvarjeni po Božji podobi.
It is a great news,
In to je čudovita novica.
particularly for people who feel lost.
Še posebno za ljudi, ki se čutijo izgubljene.
You belong,
Vi pripadate,
you have purpose,
imate namen,
God has a call upon your life.
Bog ima klic nad vašim
If
življenjem.
you don't know what it is,
Če ne veste, kaj je,
it's your job to find it.
potem je tvoja naloga, da ugotoviš, kaj je ta klic.
Everybody
Vsi
has a call upon their life.
imajo klic nad svojim življenjem.
And the fourth idea is this:
In četrta ideja je sledeča.
being made in the image of God
Biti narejen po Božji
means you
podobi
have God-like characteristics.
pomeni, da imaš Božji karakter oziroma Božje značilnosti.
You're not God,
Niste Bog,
but you have God-like characteristics.
imate pa značilnosti, kot jih ima Bog.
You can create.
Lahko ustvarjate,
Yeah, we can make art, we can build things, we can create things. Yeah?
lahko ustvarjamo umetnost, stvari, karkoli.
You have free will.
Imate svobodno voljo,
You have the ability to reason.
imate zmožnost razuma,
You have moral and ethical knowledge.
imate moralno in etično znanje.
All humans are made to relate to God.
Vsi ljudje so ustvarjeni, da se povezujejo z Bogom.
Man is made to relate to one another,
In človek je ustvarjen, da se povezuje eden z drugim,
to form deep relationships.
da ustvarimo globoke odnose.
And finally,
In končno,
man is God's vice regent on earth
človek je Božji namestnik na zemlji,
to rule
da vlada
and take dominion over the earth. Yeah?
in da gospoduje zemlji.
We were created.
Bili smo ustvarjeni.
God said to man,
Bog je rekel človeku,
be fruitful
bodi
and
rodoviten
exercise dominion.
in prakticiraj svoje gospodovanje.
So if any of you struggle with ideas of belonging,
Če se borite z idejo pripadnosti,
ideas of purpose,
z idejo namena
and ideas of fruitfulness,
in z idejo rodovitnosti,
study this idea of being made in the image of God.
potem proučujte to idejo, da ste ustvarjeni po Božji podobi.
Okay, that was the answers on the questions.
Torej, to so odgovori na vprašanja.
Now we get to tonight's discussion is about Kajn and Abel.
Sedaj pa prihajamo na nocojšnjo razpravo, ki je o Kajnu in Abelu.
And what I'm going to do is just suggest that we read through that story,
In rad bi, da preberemo to zgodbo.
the first 16 verses of Genesis chapter 4.
Prebrali bomo torej Prvo Mojzesovo četrto poglavje, prvih 16 vrstic. Človek je spoznal svojo ženo Evo. Spočela je in rodila Kajna. Rekla je, dobila sem moža od Gospoda. Nato je rodila njegovega brata Abla. In Abel je pasel drobnico, Kajn pa je obdeloval zemljo. Ko je preteklo nekaj časa, je Kajn daroval Gospodu daritev od sadov zemlje. Tudi Abel je daroval od prvencev svoje drobnice in njihove tolšče. Gospod se je ozrl na Abla in njegovo daritev, na Kajna in njegovo daritev pa se ni ozrl. Zato se je Kajn zelo ujezil in obraz mu je upadel. Gospod je rekel Kajnu, zakaj se jeziš in zakaj ti je upadel obraz? Ali ga ne boš vzdignil, če delaš dobro? Če pa ne delaš dobro, greh preži nate pri vratih. Njegovo poželenje se obrača proti tebi, a ti mu gospoduj. Tedaj je Kajn rekel svojemu bratu Abelu: Pojdiva ven. Ko pa sta bila na polju, se je Kajn vzdignil proti svojemu bratu Abelu in ga ubil. Gospod je rekel Kajnu: Kje je tvoj brat Abel? Odvrnil je: Ne vem, sem mar jaz varuh svojega brata? In Gospod je rekel: Kaj si storil? Glas krvi tvojega brata vpije iz zemlje k meni. Bodi torej preklet zemlje, ki je odprla svoja usta in iz tvojih rok sprejela kri tvojega brata. Ko boš obdeloval zemljo, naj ti ne daje več svoje moči, bludil in begal boš po svetu. Kajn je rekel Gospodu: Moja krivda je prevelika, da bi jo mogel nositi. Glej, danes me izganjaš iz dežele in moral se bom skrivati pred tvojim obličjem. Bludil in begal bom po zemlji. Kdorkoli me bo našel, me bo ubil. Gospod pa mu je odgovoril: Ne tako. Kdorkoli ubije Kajna, bo 7-krat maščevan. In Gospod je dal Kajnu znamenje, da ga nihče, ki bi ga našel, ne bi ubil. Kajn je odšel izpred Gospodovega obličja in se naselil v deželi Not, vzhodno od Edna.
Amen. I suspect that we all have an idea of what worship is.
Sumim, da imamo vsi neko idejo, kaj je čaščenje.
What it is for you.
Kaj je to za vas?
I have heard some say that worship is to delight God's heart.
Nekateri so rekli, čaščenje oziroma slavljenje je, da uživamo v Božjem srcu.
Probably this catches a point, yeah?
In to verjetno zadene bistvo.
We might think that worship is a humbling of our heart
Morda si mislimo, da je čaščenje ponižnost našega srca,
to express admiration
da izražamo občudovanje
or
oziroma neko občudovanje, osuplost
at the greatness of God.
pred Božjim veličastvom.
We express our love toward the goodness of God.
Svojo ljubezen izražamo proti Božji dobroti.
Perhaps you've thought what worship is for you.
Morda ste že razmišljali, kaj je slavljenje za vas.
It's not always an outward activity.
To ni vedno aktivnost, ki je vidna navzven.
You know, people bow their head,
Ja, veste, ljudje pač sklonijo svoje glave,
raise their hands,
dvignejo roke,
kneel on the floor.
morda pokleknejo na tla.
These are activities of worship,
To so neke aktivnosti slavljenja,
but it's an activity in our heart
je pa aktivnost našega srca,
that leads to these outward visible actions.
ki pravzaprav vodi do teh zunanjih in vidnih dejavnikov oziroma aktivnosti.
Worship is firstly
Slavljenje je v prvi vrsti
a posture of the heart
poza oziroma drža srca
and our will
in naša volja
towards God,
proti Bogu,
which will eventually bring the visible signs.
ki bo s časoma prinesla vidne znake.
In the same way,
Na enak način,
if somebody hates or if they are angry,
če nekdo sovraži ali je jezen,
eventually it will come out.
bo to slej ko prej prišlo na dan.
So does love.
Tako kot ljubezen.
If we have love,
Če imamo ljubezen,
if we honor,
če častimo,
eventually it's going to come out.
slej ko prej bo to prišlo na plan.
If we love and worship God,
Če ljubimo in častimo Boga,
it will be evident in our actions.
bo to zelo očitno v naših dejanjih.
Now, the context of chapter 2 through chapter 5 of Genesis
Kontekst poglavja 2 do 5 v Prvi Mojzesovi
is the writer is explaining the development of civilization.
je, da pravzaprav avtor razlaga, kako se je civilizacija oblikovala.
Remember when we started our discussion on God,
Ko smo začeli razpravo o Bogu,
we said that there are 10 genealogies in the book of Genesis.
smo rekli, da je v Prvi Mojzesovi knjigi 10 rodovnikov.
And these genealogies provide the structure of the book.
In ti rodovniki nekako priskrbijo strukturo knjige.
Now, the Bible does not report all that has happened in people's lives.
Sveto pismo ne poroča o vsem, kar se je dogajalo v življenjih ljudi.
For example,
Naprimer,
when Noah went into the ark,
ko je šel Noe v barko,
he took more clean animals
je vzel več čistih živali,
with which he would sacrifice later.
ki jih je potem kasneje žrtvoval.
So in this way,
Na ta način torej
we understand
razumemo,
that Noah knew about the sacrificial system.
da je Noe že poznal sistem žrtvovanja.
Before Moses,
pred Mojzesom,
whom God gave the sacrificial system to. Yes?
kateremu je prav tako Bog dal sistem žrtvovanja.
We understand
Razumemo,
that God had given Adam and Eve
da je Bog dal Adamu in Evi
instructions about worship and sacrifice,
navodila glede čaščenja in žrtvovanja,
which they would have passed on to their children.
katerega sta potem prenesla na svoje otroke.
This is how Abel knew
Tako je Abel vedel,
that worship
da je čaščenje
and the correct way of worship
in pravilen način čaščenja,
was a blood sacrifice
da je to krvna daritev
with faith.
in sicer v veri.
That's the two things that we read in the New Testament
Tu sta dve stvari, ki jo beremo v Novi zavezi,
that Cain was criticized for, shall we say.
za katere je Kajn prejel kritiko.
I believe that Cain knew the proper way to worship,
Jaz verjamem, da je Kajn vedel, kako na pravilen način častiti,
but he chose his own way.
ampak izbral je svoj način.
This is the heart of the problem we see in Cain.
In tu je srčika težave, ki jo vidimo pri Kajnu.
He expressed his independence from God.
Izražal je svojo neodvisnost od Boga.
He wanted to describe to God
Bogu je hotel opisati,
how he would worship him.
kako bi on rad častil njega.
Have you ever thought like that?
A ste kdaj pomislili na ta način?
I'm just going to do that today, Lord. That's enough.
Gospod, danes bom naredil to, to je dovolj.
Yeah, I think we know sometimes, yeah?
Včasih vemo.
I'm just going to do like this today, Lord.
Gospod, danes bom delal tako.
At the end of the day, Cain wanted to be captain of his own soul.
Ob koncu dneva pa je Kajn hotel obdržati svojo dušo.
So this section, as we said, tells the story of the early development of humanity.
Kot smo že rekli, ta del zgodbe torej prikaže, kako se je zgodnje človeštvo razvijalo.
Chapter 2 is a recount of the creation story.
Poglavje 2 je povzetek zgodbe stvarjenja.
Chapter 3 is the fall
Poglavje 3 je padec
with Adam and Eve.
z Adamom in Evo.
Chapter 4,
Poglavje
we
4,
get the story of Cain and Abel.
tu vidimo zgodbo Kajna in Abla.
And tragically, it finishes with Lamech.
In tragično se konča z Lamehom.
And just read this text from Genesis 4:23-24.
In bomo pogledali Prvo Mojzesovo poglavje 4, vrstice 23 do 24. Lameh je rekel svojima ženama: Ada in Cila, poslušajta moj glas, Lamehovi ženi, prisluhnite mojim besedam. Moža ubijem, ki me rani, in dečka, ki mi prizadene prasko. Kajti Kajn bo 7-krat maščevan, Lameh pa 77-krat.
Lamech boasted,
Lameh se je postavljal.
I have killed a man for wounding me,
Ubil sem moža, ker me je ranil.
a young man for striking me.
Mladega moža, ker me je prizadel.
What he's saying?
Kaj tu pravi?
I'm so great and mean and ugly. Yeah?
Jaz sem tako velik in zloben in grd.
If Cain is revenged sevenfold,
Če bo Kajn maščevan
then
7-krat,
Lamech is 77-fold.
pa bo Lameh 77-krat.
I'm greater than Cain.
Jaz sem večji od Kajna.
If somebody's going to get some punishment, for me it's twice as much or 7 times as much.
Če bo nekdo kaznovan, bo zame 2-krat toliko ali večkrat toliko.
This was an arrogant and prideful boast.
In to je zelo arogantno bahanje.
And it shows how man had become so depraved.
In tu vidimo, kako je človek postal res usmiljenja
And
vreden.
of course, after the next genealogy, the next gap,
In po naslednjem rodovniku
God must deal with humanity through Noah.
se mora Bog ukvarjati s človeštvom preko Noeta.
Now, we are often asked the question,
Mi velikokrat zastavimo vprašanje,
how was it that Cain and Abel took wives and had children
kako je možno, da sta Kajn in Abel imela žene in otroke,
if Adam and Eve only had 3 children?
če pa sta Adam in Eva imela le 3 otroke?
Where did all the other people come from?
Odkot so vsi ostali ljudje prišli?
I believe that during the lifetime of Adam and Eve,
Jaz mislim, da v času življenja Adama in Eve
they had many, many children.
sta imela mnogo otrok.
Those children grew and had children.
In ti otroci so odraščali in imeli svoje otroke.
Genesis 5:3 tells us that when Adam was 130,
Prva Mojzesova nam pravi, da ko je bil Adam 130 let star,
he fathered Seth.
je bil oče Setu.
But he was not the first child.
On pa ni bil prvi otrok.
He was simply through whom this lineage was traced.
Pač pa je to samo prvi, po katerem se ta linija poimenuje oziroma nadaljuje.
In the New Testament,
V Novi
the
zavezi
lineage of Jesus is traced right back to Adam.
vidimo Jezusovo linijo vse nazaj do Adama.
Adam lived another 800 years
Adam je živel še 800 let
after Seth,
po Setu.
so you would imagine he had many, many children in that time.
Lahko si torej predstavljate, da je imel v vsem tem času še mnogo, mnogo otrok.
In the New Testament,
V Novi zavezi
we understand from 3 places
na 3 mestih razumemo,
that the works of Cain
da so bila Kajnova dela
were evil
zelo hudobna
and lacked faith.
in da mu je manjkalo vere.
Genesis does not expand on the life of Cain,
Prva Mojzesova knjiga ne govori široko o Kajnovem življenju,
yet the Holy Spirit seems to make clear
ampak zdi se, da je Sveti Duh razjasnil
through the New Testament writers
preko piscev Nove zaveze,
that Cain had problems.
da je Kajn imel težave.
And I just want us to observe 3 of them.
In rad bi, da opazimo oziroma opazujemo 3 odlomke.
1 John 3:12,
Najprej v 1. Janezu 3:12.
we should not be like Cain,
Ne bodimo kakor Kajn,
who was of the evil one
ki je bil od hudiča
and murdered his brother.
in je ubil svojega brata.
And why did he murder him?
In zakaj ga je ubil?
Because his own deeds were evil.
Ker so bila njegova dela hudobna.
So he acted in a selfish way.
Deloval je torej na sebičen način,
Then he became jealous of his own brother's righteous actions.
potem pa je postal ljubosumen na pravične dejanja svojega lastnega brata.
Secondly, Jude says in Jude verse 11,
In potem pravi Juda v 11. vrstici.
woe to them,
Gorje jim,
for they have walked in the way of Cain.
krenili so na Kajnovo pot.
Okay, we'll have to understand what that means.
Morali bomo razumeti, kaj to pomeni.
Hebrews helps us. Hebrews 11:4.
Pomoč najdemo v Hebrejcem 11:4.
For by faith
Po veri
Abel offered to God a more acceptable sacrifice than Cain,
je Abel daroval Bogu večjo žrtev kakor Kajn,
through which he was commended as righteous.
Po veri se je zanj pričalo, da je pravičen.
God commended him by accepting his gifts,
Saj je Bog pričal za njegove darove.
and through his faith,
Po njegovi veri,
though he died,
čeprav je umrl,
he still speaks.
še vedno govori.
That's interesting, isn't it?
In to je zanimivo, kaj ne?
Abel didn't live so long,
Abel ni živel tako dolgo,
but he still speaks today.
ampak še danes on govori.
Because what he did,
Saj to, kar je on
he
naredil,
did in faith.
je naredil v veri.
So I see that from this we can make 7 observations.
Iz tega torej lahko naredimo 7 opažanj,
To avoid
da bi se izognili
the mistakes of Cain,
napakam, ki jih je naredil Kajn,
to not walk in the way of Cain,
in da ne bi hodili po Kajnovi poti,
but to live in faith.
pač pa da bi živeli v veri.
Firstly, Cain worshipped in a humanistic way.
Kajn je častil na humanističen način.
He offered what he had,
Ponudil je to, kar je imel,
claiming that it would be enough.
in je trdil, da bo dovolj.
How many times have you heard people say, well, I'm a good person.
Kolikokrat ste že slišali, da so ljudje rekli, pa sem dober človek,
I give some money.
dam nekaj
I
denarja,
help.
ja, pomagam.
I've heard many people over my life explain.
Skozi življenje sem slišal mnogo ljudi, ki so to razlagali.
And I could say,
In lahko rečem,
actually some of them I think, yeah, they probably are. They're probably better than me. They're
Nekateri-
good people.
nekateri bi morda rekli, ja, saj so boljši od mene, so dobri ljudje.
That's true.
To je res,
But it's not goodness done in faith.
ampak to ni dobrota, ki bi bila narejena v veri.
Secondly,
Drugič,
he did not worship in faith.
Kajn ni častil v veri.
The point made in Hebrews.
To pa je bistvo, ki ga vidimo v pismu Hebrejcem.
How would he worship in faith?
Kako bi Kajn častil v veri?
What's faith?
Kaj je vera?
To hope
Da upamo
and to trust in God.
in da zaupamo v Boga.
So you do something
Torej nekaj naredite
with hope,
z zaupanjem
trusting
in zaupate,
that God will receive it.
da bo Bog to sprejel.
Not what Cain did.
Tega pa Kajn ni naredil.
Here you go, have this. This is what I'm giving you.
Tukaj imaš na vzem, to ti dajem.
Yeah, we see that often.
Ja, to velikokrat vidimo.
The third observation.
Tretje opažanje.
He did not worship God with the best of what he had.
Boga ni častil z najboljšim, kar je imel.
If you read carefully, you'll see that the Bible tells us
Če previdno berete oziroma pozorno berete, boste videli, da nam Sveto pismo pravi.
Cain brought to the Lord
Kajn je pred Boga prinesel
an offering
daritev
of the fruit of the ground.
sadov tal.
Now, if you read what Abel did,
Če pa preberete, kaj je Abel prinesel,
he brought the firstborn
prinesel je prvenec
of his flock
svoje črede
and their fat portions.
in najboljše.
So we get two ideas that he brought the best.
Dobimo torej dve ideji, da je prinesel svoje najboljše.
Some have suggested that not only it should have been a blood sacrifice,
Nekateri predlagajo ne le, da bi morala biti krvna žrtev oziroma daritev,
but Cain didn't even bring the best.
ampak Kajn celo ni prinesel svojega
He didn't
najboljšega.
bring the first fruits.
Ni prinesel prvenca svoje žetve.
Abel clearly brought the first fruits,
Abel je očitno prinesel prvenec
the fat portion.
in najboljše.
You remember David.
Se spomnite Davida?
David, a man after God's own heart.
David, mož po Božjem srcu,
He said, I will not worship the Lord
je rekel, ne bom častil Gospoda
with something that costs me nothing.
z nečim, kar me nič ne stane.
That's interesting, isn't it?
To je zanimivo, kaj ne?
Because we know that worship is from the heart.
Saj vemo, da čaščenje izhaja iz
Yeah, we know
srca.
that worship comes from the heart.
Vemo, da čaščenje prihaja iz
So what it
srca.
means,
Kaj torej misli?
that it costs us something, but it comes from the heart.
Da nas nekaj stane, ampak prihaja iz srca.
It's not about pulling out as much money as you can.
To ni, da ven potegnete toliko denarja, kolikor lahko.
What it costs you in your heart.
Kaj bo to pomenilo za vaše
It
srce? Kaj vas bo
costs
stalo?
priorities.
To vas stane
It
prioritet,
costs laying down our lives.
stane nas tega, da položimo svoje
It
življenje,
costs our ambitions.
stane nas naših ambicij,
Maybe our dreams
morda celo sam,
have to go on the altar
moram iti k oltarju,
until God gives them back again.
dokler mi Bog tega ne vrne.
Fourthly,
Četrtič,
Cain refused to repent.
Kajn je zavrnil kesanje.
God told him that sin was crouching at the door of his heart.
Bog mu je rekel, da je greh pred njegovimi vrati.
Have you ever done something knowing that was wrong, but you're going to do it anyway?
A ste kdaj naredili nekaj, kar ste vedeli, da je narobe, pa ste še vseeno to naredili?
I'm not talking about driving down the wrong way. No.
Pa tu ne mislim, da narobe vozite.
Sometimes in life, maybe you can look back and you say, well, I shouldn't have done that.
Včasih se morda v življenju ozrete nazaj in rečete, tega ne bi smel storiti.
And you knew at the time,
Takrat ste to vedeli,
your conscience pricked you.
vaša vest vam je govorila,
I shouldn't be going there, I shouldn't be doing that.
ne bi smel iti tja, ne bi smel narediti tega,
I'm going to do it anyway, I want to have a fun.
pa vseeno bom to naredil, hočem se zabavati.
Fifthly,
Petič,
he rejected God's voice and influence.
Kajn je zavrnil Božji glas in njegov vpliv.
So not only he refused to repent,
Ne le, da je zavrnil kesanje,
he rejected God's word.
zavrnil je Božjo besedo.
It's enough.
Dovolj je.
Sixthly,
Šestič,
he prioritized earthly living
Kajn je dal prioriteto
by
zemeljskemu življenju,
doing what was comfortable for him.
tako da je delal to, kar je bilo udobno zanj.
He was concerned about his own comfort and his own safety.
Skrbelo ga je njegovo lastno udobje in njegova lastna varnost.
And finally, seventhly,
In zadnjič, sedmič,
even when he was exposed,
tudi ko je bil razkrit,
we read that Cain wept.
beremo, da je Kajn jokal.
Why did he weep? Because of his brother?
Zakaj pa je jokal? Zaradi svojega brata?
No, he wept because he got caught.
Ne, Kajn je jokal, ker so ga ujeli.
He wept because people were going to punish him.
Kajn je jokal, ker bi ljudje kaznovali njega.
That's the ultimate selfishness, isn't it?
In to je največja
We
sebičnost, kaj ne?
weep because we get caught, not because we harmed somebody.
Mi jočemo zato, ker so nas ujeli, ne ker smo nekoga prizadeli.
Even when God spoke to him.
Celo, ko mu je Bog spregovoril,
Where is your brother?
kje je tvoj brat?
Oh, I don't know. My brother's keeper.
O, jaz ne vem, a sem jaz varuh svojega brata?
Oh my goodness. What we learn from Cain and Abel,
Kar se naučimo od Kajna in Abla,
brothers and sisters,
brati in sestre,
there is a prescribed way to worship God.
obstaja predpisan način, kako naj častimo Boga.
Plan to worship.
Načrt, kako naj častimo Boga.
Take space in our lives to worship.
Vzemimo si prostor v svojem življenju, da
Give
častimo.
God the best.
Dajte Bogu najboljše.
Do you get up in the morning?
Vstanete
Look,
zjutraj.
I don't want to make anybody feel guilty. But
Nikomu nočem zbuditi slabe vesti,
give God the best of your day.
ampak dajte Bogu najboljše svojega dneva.
When are you the best?
Kdaj ste
Maybe
najboljši?
you are the best in the night time. I don't know.
Morda ste najboljši po noči, ne
Maybe
vem.
you're the best at lunchtime.
Morda ste v svojem najboljšem za čas kosila.
When are you the best?
Kdaj ste najboljši?
I know some people take 3 hours to wake up in the morning. That's okay.
Vem, da nekateri potrebujejo 3 ure, da se zjutraj zbudijo, to je okej.
When are you the best?
Ampak kdaj ste najboljši?
Take that 15 minutes at that time.
V tistem času si vzemite 15 minut,
Then read your Bible, pray, worship.
berite Sveto pismo, molite in častite.
The second thing I think we learn is
Druga stvar, ki mislim, da se jo naučimo,
we cannot worship God in our own ways
Boga ne moremo častiti na svoj lasten način
and on our own terms.
in pod svojimi lastnimi pogoji.
If we do that,
Če to delamo,
we have God for our servant.
potem Bog postane naš služabnik
And we are in fact trying to be God.
in mi poskušamo biti Bog.
We have to worship God
Mi moramo častiti Boga
through the one mediator, Jesus Christ.
preko enega posrednika, Jezusa
Look what Paul
Kristusa.
says in Timothy.
Poglejmo, kaj Pavel pravi v 1.
1
Timoteju.
Timothy chapter 2 and verse 5.
1. Timotej 2, 5 do 6.
There is one God,
Bog je namreč samo eden,
and one mediator
samo eden je tudi srednik
between God and man,
med Bogom in ljudmi.
and the man Jesus Christ,
Človek Kristus Jezus.
who gave himself
On, ki je sam sebe dal
as a ransom for all,
v odkupnino za vse.
which is the testimony given at the proper time.
Pričevanje ob svojem času.
Ever since Cain and Abel,
Vse od Kajna in Abla.
people have been trying to reach or to please
Ljudje poskušajo doseči ali ugajati
or to earn favor with God
ali pa si prislužiti naklonjenost pri Bogu
their own way.
na svoj lasten način.
People do it today.
Ljudje to danes
They
počnejo.
make sacrifices to God.
Žrtvujejo se Bogu.
You remember when the big cathedral in the middle of Paris was burned down? Yeah?
Se spomnite, ko je sredi Pariza zgorela velika katedrala?
Within a few days,
V nekaj dneh
all this money was promised.
je bilo obljubljenega ogromno denarja.
People thought, oh, I'm gonna get in and I'm gonna do something and please God.
Ljudje so rekli, jaz bom nekaj naredil in ugajal Bogu.
I'm told that most of it never came.
Slišal sem, da večina tega denarja nikoli ni prišla.
But sometimes it's easy to give money.
Ampak včasih je res enostavno dati
God
denar.
doesn't want your money.
Ampak Bog
Well, maybe
noče
he
tvojega
does,
denarja.
but
Morda
he doesn't
hoče,
need your money.
ampak ne potrebuje tvojega
He
denarja.
wants your heart.
Bog hoče tvoje
He
srce.
wants what's most precious to us.
Bog hoče tisto, kar je nam najbolj dragoceno.
And finally,
In nas končno,
like Abel,
tako kot Abel,
we must learn to worship with faith.
se moramo naučiti, kako častiti v veri oziroma z vero.
Doing our acts of worship
Ko delamo, ko častimo
with a clean conscience,
s čisto vestjo,
believing
ko verujemo
and trusting in God.
in zaupamo Bogu.
If we worship in Christ
Če častimo v Kristusu
with faith
z vero
and trust,
in zaupanjem,
we're going to please God.
potem bomo ugajali
God's
Bogu.
going to be pleased with us.
In to bo ugajanje Bogu.
Amen.
Amen.